This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, it's now 9:43. We're running a little late due to technology problems, but we're on course now, and this workshop will come to order. Rob, you want to take it away?
Well, Mayor and Council, thank you, and sorry for the delay. Technology is great until it's not. So we thank you for your patience as we start to go into the budget workshop. This is the first budget workshop for the 2023-2024 budget. And we're probably going to take, I would say, we've got this scheduled till 5 o'clock. We hope it doesn't go till 5 o'clock. Just to kind of talk a little about the logistics of the day. Of course, you see that you had some bagels and some coffee back there. We do have lunch that's going to be provided for you coming in about 11:30. So we'll decide where a good stopping point is at that point as we get close to lunch. I wanted to start off with the budget calendar, and all of you have these in your packet. And we're sorry for some of the small text. We did put that just on 2 slides to save a few trees as we were preparing this, but we wanted you to have a packet and at least have an opportunity to take notes as we go through this with questions. But hopefully you all have already seen this calendar, which I'm sure you have, and I'll just jump right to March the 23rd, which again, this is the first draft. This is the first work session that we've had for the budget. March the 30th, we will be working on, and Diana has already started to work on the budget book. And we'll get updates from town council, certainly after this meeting, along with the department heads. April the 13th will be the second budget work session, and we'll take the information from today and questions that you all may have, and we will put that into the budget work session, which will be the proposed budget. May the 5th will be the first public hearing. May the 23rd will be the public hearing and the first reading with hopefully the adoption at the second reading on June the 13th. So that just gives you an idea of where we're at from a timeline perspective with the budget. So what are the goals for today? Well, first of all, we're going to tag team the presentation. It's going to be mainly me and Diana going through the PowerPoint presentation and this draft discussion throughout today, along with the department heads, and Heritage Digital will also be here to talk about their budget and some of their needs for the next fiscal year. We want to generate discussion. This is what this is about. Is this going to be an all-inclusive presentation? Or are you probably going to have all the numbers that some of you all have seen in the past? Maybe, maybe not, but that's okay. This is truly the first time we've been in front of each other for this fiscal year or for next year's fiscal year budget, and we want to have a lot of discussion. We want to hear what you all have to say. We want to know, what did we miss? What do we need to change? And then moving forward into the next budget presentation, what do we need to do? That's what today is about. Just the very nature of the definition of a budget workshop, and workshop is that. So we are actually looking forward to hearing what you all have to say and some of the things that we need to do. So we tried to put together an easy format for you all to understand as we went through this presentation, provide you with the information so that you all can make objective decisions, and show an analysis of both the revenue and the expenditures. And this really is to show the big picture. Now, everybody's big picture here is probably different. You know, there's 7 council members whose definition of that is going to be different. And it's hard to put something like this together and be so inclusive of all the personalities that are sitting behind the dais. That's a little difficult for us to be able to do. We tried to do our best. We actually put together a team. It was me, it was Diana, it was Vicki and Tabitha. I pulled Tabitha in, even though that was really beyond her scope, but because of her background, she helped us put the presentation together. So this just wasn't Diana and Rob. This was us sitting in the conference room and working on this to come up with a logical sequence of information that we thought, and then to present it to all of you. So hopefully that you understand that, because we are going to need some decisions from today in order for us to be able to move forward and continue in preparing a balanced budget. It's not easy to put together a budget. It's not easy to put together a budget when you're the fire chief one day and the interim administrator the next day, and you've never done this before. Certainly I understand budgets. I understand how to present budgets. I've done that my whole career in the fire service, but this is a little bit different. And I wanted to make sure that we did our very best in this first work session. And this budget is not, today we're not voting on anything. We are presenting information. The department heads are presenting information for you all to consider. But what I ask as we go through today, or what we ask really, is as we go through the PowerPoint and the information this morning, certainly if you have a question, ask it, and we're going to answer it the best we can. But what we really want is for you all to listen, to digest the information, and then when we conclude the presentation, we're going to come back to the request, the department head request, where we're at, and then maybe dive into that a little bit more. So as we go into preparing the second phase of the budget in that second work session, and actually the budget book, we'll have more information to go. We're not looking for you all to give us all the questions today that you may have. We know that's an unrealistic expectation because you may leave here today and think of other things. Diane and I are open to more discussion, to answering questions. We've talked about that, but we do have to make some decisions today on how to move forward. So how did we get here? Well, we reviewed the previous budgets. Department heads reviewed their operational budgets and detailed worksheets, and they met with me and Diana. So we did meet with every department head, and we sat down and we looked at their budgets. We did not want to have a haphazard approach to this presentation and what their needs are. And I think the department heads will tell you, we just didn't go, okay, it looks good. I mean, we went through the department heads. You all have very good department heads, and they went through their budgets. And we tried to make sense of them, and we tried to make sure that what we are presenting are truly the needs that they have. And then it'll be up to you all to decide what we get. So, we had a lot of discussion about that. So the department heads had to justify cost escalation in their budgets, and then they had to justify their supplemental requests. What are those other things that they're asking for next year's budget, staffing, equipment, and et cetera? All of those things that, when we get up and start talking about that as department heads, we had a lot of discussion about those. So something that we thought was very important for us to look at, because Surfside Beach is not immune to everything that's happening in the United States today, in the world today, is we looked at some of the economic challenges. And there was two things that stuck out at us. One of them was the high inflation and the low unemployment rate, because we're not immune to that here, and the Federal Reserve interest rates and how that could potentially impact some of the decisions that you all have, and how difficult it really does make putting a budget together, because those things do need to be considered. Because even though we are a resort community, there are people that live here that are on budgets. As we go through this presentation, you all have some pretty tough decisions. But when we started to put this together, we thought this was just an important slide to show you. And I know that all of you are paying attention, really to what is going on. We looked at Surfside Beach's revenue and expenditure assumptions, and there was, really four main bullets that stuck out at us, and it was property tax revenue adjusted based on the growth here of the town. The tourism-driven tax and the fee revenues are expected to remain strong here in Surfside Beach. However, growth is at a historic level that hasn't seen and is not expected, and there's going to be some adjustments to that. Some construction permitting shows no sign of really slowing down, and it's unknown how long this rapid growth is going to continue in the housing prices and interest rates as they continue to climb. What does that plateau look like? What are the people that are having their second homes, and how many people are moving in here and no longer just visiting here? All of that has an impact. And then we looked at operational costs that will continue to rise as a result of wage inflation. We're going to talk about staffing levels, the supply chain constraints, the fuel inflations that we have to deal with, and just the materials and supply inflation. A set of personal protective gear is not the same cost and will not be the same cost next fiscal year as it is this year. Same way with outfitting, John's area, all of the department heads, from PB&Z to the police department. So these are some assumptions that, we're going to have to consider, that you're all going to have to consider as we go through preparing this budget to present to the community. I put this slide in here, a comprehensive plan, and put a big question mark because you all know that Sabrina is actively working on. You all participated already in some first steps with the comprehensive plan, but I thought it was very significant to just put a big question mark here. Because we do have a comprehensive plan that is, the old one's going to be going away. We're going to have a new one. And it is, as we work on this, the comprehensive plan is not going to be finished. But I think it's very important to understand, and our community to understand, you all have given clear direction that we need to follow the comprehensive plan. As the comprehensive plan is developed, that ties to budget initiatives. And as the community, Sabrina, all of us work on what the next 10 years is going to look like, it is going to be a huge consideration moving forward. How all of that impacts us now, we could look at our old comprehensive plan, but quite frankly, I'm not exactly sure how much we're really looking and paying attention to that. What I'm saying is the next administrator that comes in here, working with all of you, working with Sabrina, this is a big deal. This has to be done well and right. Agree, Sabrina? Because there's going to be a lot of things tied to this comprehensive plan as we move forward. So the general fund budget discussion, to kind of start a little bit with some numbers for the town of Surfside Beach. When you look at our governmental operating budget and you look at revenue and other financial sources, the total is $9,476,070. Our expenditures / expenses is $10,566,880. And we're going to have a shortfall based on the assumptions and based on some best guesses that Diana has put together. And we've had discussions that you're going to see how we try to tie all these numbers and make sense and numbers match and all that. It is difficult. We're going to have a shortfall of the needs that the department heads have and the town has of a little over $1 million. And this is from general fund. So, yes.
But this does not include the wish list of 4.7 million. That comes later, correct?
That is, yeah, it's included in
Wishes
that.
are in here.
Yeah, the wishes are all in
I
here.
stopped at a certain point and said,
We
how
can,
far do we want to go?
exactly.
So not all the wishes are in
No,
there?
all
Not-
the wishes are in here.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and this 1 million, yes, ma'am. It's that, and that's a really good question. That is our wish list. That's our hole that we're going to try to fill.
Okay.
That's a great question.
So
We're
of
going
the
to,
4.7, we need to remove 1.1.
is that correct?
Where's the 4.7?
Yeah.
I'm not,
Well, the 4.7 is what I came up with of all the various wish lists
but that's all the different parts.
from everybody.
From everybody.
And there seems to be a couple missing that I didn't see numbers for, but
And we'll
get to
and
that.
we will, yes, ma'am. And we want to
I
get
just
to
want to make
that.
sure we're talking about $1 million shortfall.
Not 4.
Not 5.7.
No.
And that's correct. That's
Correct.
exactly right. Yes, ma'am. So what are some of the budget discussion points, this wish list that we have put together? And as you look at this, I understand, because I could read body language, and I wish I would have been in your all's houses when you got this presentation. But the fact of the matter is, and Diana and I had a lot of discussion about this, because I will tell you, as Diana, as the finance director, who has a whole lot more experience than Rob Clemens does at this was a little point of discussion for us about all of this. But I was of the belief that we need to show you all what the needs are. It is our responsibility to do that. You all decide what we get. But to not show it is not, I don't think that's a prudent way for us to be as department heads and as an interim administrator. So we know it's a lot. We understand it. We're trying to fulfill our responsibility, and part of our responsibility is going to do what you all tell us to do. And we all understand that. But here's where we're at. We're looking at an additional 15 new positions, and that is going to be the biggest asks that we have. We're looking at 4 full-time firefighters, and we're going to get more into this. So just know this is just kind of the starting discussion point. 2 full-time police officers, 1 full-time public works department person, 2 full-time administrative people, 1 full-time finance department person, 4 full-time peer discussion, we're about peer, 1 part-time court, There's Heritage Digital upgrades that are in that number, and equipment and our network, and then obviously our peer expenses, which is going to be something new that we're going to have to discuss. So these discussion points are starting discussion points. We're going to dive into this more. The department heads are going to explain and try to justify all of this to you. And these are going to be some of the things that before we leave here today, we at least need to have some idea of what you all are thinking. So Diana and I and the department heads can go back and readjust and do the things that we need to do, because we know that you all have tough decisions that you have to make. So Diane is going to come up and she's going to explain and talk about general fund revenue and expenditures and some of the numbers as we dive into that.
Do you mind if I sit, because my hip is out of work?
That's fine. You don't have to stand up.
This is the assumptions that we made, and that all of these wish lists are in here. Yes, that was a very good question. And then at some point I just stopped, because this is the whole, how do I fill it? Do I keep going? And there are other places that some of these expenditures can probably come from, but until we know whether we want them or we don't want them, I can do that in the next step. So for property taxes, I can do an increase based on the number of new houses we had this year, and the difference between what the county collected and what we had projected for this year. I will tell you that next year is reassessment. So for the following tax, not the one that's going to come in October, but the following one is reassessment. The problem with reassessment, just to give you a little background, is you are capped by the state law that you can only go up by 10%. So if you're capped at 10% and your house went up $200,000 in value, you're not going to get taxed on that. So it limits, almost every house is probably going to have a cap on it. Because if your house is 200,000 at 10%, I'm sure it's all, the market value is much more than that now. So it's going to be a very difficult year for the county. I do want to call them and see if they're going to stay on track to do it, because it's going to be a wild ride for them. So just so that you know. And what happens when you have reassessment, you can't bring in any more money than you brought in the year before. You are capped. What you brought in last year is what you have to bring in the same for next year, because that's the whole reason to do reassessment. Not to say you can't up the millage if you have, there's 3 criteria that you have to meet, but it's not as easy as with the. So that property tax number is a little bit bigger than last year. Business licenses is going to be probably flat. We did do a little bit with permitting, because people are still doing them. The transfer from other funds is the number that is probably the one I played them with the most. I don't play loosely. I took whatever I could off the top of my head from what people requested. Took money from hospitality to pay for grounds, took money from hospitality to pay for some of the things in public works, but we probably can tweak that a little more once we know. Salaries is not something that can come out of hospitality. Anything that had to do with the police department or the fire department for equipment can come out of hospitality. That's the way our rules are written. Franchise fees is pretty standard. Nothing is really increasing too much there. Parking revenue, Pivot is still playing, getting the newer numbers, because apparently the assumptions they originally gave me have changed. So we have to, that number was going to change. They thought they were going to do more citation revenue than they think now, so that's probably going to go down. Intergovernmental is just what we get from the state. That's pretty standard. Fines and forfeitures are up this year, so I did up it a little bit for next year, which is why you'll see why they need a person. Fines keep going up and then just are backlogged. Capital replacement, that's the capital items, which are all laid out in here. That all comes from 3 mills that we put away every month towards capital purchases, and this would all be in general fund. And then interest and other, interest right now is booming because of, thank you, Federal Reserve, for the total revenue of the $9,476,000. That it can be a tweaked number, it's not a final number, just to be sure of that. On the expenditure side, public safety and fire are combined to do the total of everything, salaries, all of the operational expenses, and the new people are in there. General government is all of the rest of us. It's the court, it's finance, it's PD&D, and admin. Public works, that's all of their costs, and that's all of the departments in public works, excluding sanitation, which is in its own fund, as you remember. Parking, that's what Pivot has given me so far for their expenses, what they expect gonna cost them next year, or they're gonna charge us. Undepartmental is mostly the heritage. What's mostly in there is heritage. Right now, I have put all of the heritage in one place so we can discuss it, because it is a huge number. And then what we'll do is we'll probably break it out between the departments once I get a better breakdown from Luke. And then we get the capital purchases again, which is the 259. Why that's on both sides, just so you know, we have that capital reserve, and what happens is everything we fund that is applicable to that fund, we put the same money in as the same money out, so that they always net each other out. That's why the same number is on both sides. So as you can see, we have $10 million in expenditures and $9 million in revenue, which is $1 million. But as I said, all the numbers can be tweaked. It just kind of stopped at some point. So the next page is where we are now, where we've been. 2021, you can see we spent $8,157,000, or we took in $8,157,000, we spent $8,000,008, but that's because we bought the building. That is in there. Adopted for this year, they're both $8,971,000, and then next year, the $9,004,000 and the $10,005,000. Most of this is new employees, as you can imagine. Salaries and benefits, I did put a 5% COLA on there, but salaries and benefits are 70% of the budget in general. And all of the salaries are in general fund. 70% is a huge number. So that would tell me that the other things are not very significant at all. Retirement will go up 1% as the state laws keeps writing it, or the legislature keeps doing it. IT and equipment is going to be a pretty big number in all of this. And then there's some capital expenditures for public works and building maintenance. There's a lot of maintenance things that we kind of felt should come to your attention. How much longer do we put them off? Do we keep going? You know, what do you want to do with that? So the next slide is just to show you the kind of money that we have kind of saved. We have some reserves. We have the $1 million of disaster recovery, which we didn't put anything into last year because of the buying the building. This year, I don't think we had planned on anything, because I think the ordinance says we want to add to it if it allows. So possibly it's a thing we can put in next year as the pier winds down, because the pier has been our central focus, obviously. Capital replacement is the money that we put aside for those trucks and cars that come out of general fund. Can also take computers. The way the ordinance is written is it's anything that will last over 5 years. So we have been able to take computer equipment out of it. The computer equipment for the police department, which is a bigger number, we take out of hospitality. And that's the land fund, which we can use for parking or land, which is the designation that is currently set by council, which can be changed in any way you want. So what this slide is telling you is the unassigned, we have in the fund ordinance that we have to have 4 months on hand at the end of any fiscal year. So in 2021, we had 5 months. Last year, we had 4.46. This year, I think we should have 4.7 if everything goes the way I think. But unless we fix something, we'll be down to 2.3 months for next year. And that's my concern. Once I got to that, I stopped. Because I don't, unless somebody can think of some other way, which if I'm open to, I don't know, however you want to do it. So that's the concern there, and I do have to bring this number to you every year as part of the budget, so that's why I did it in this presentation, how many months we have. And we are in compliance for last year with general fund, with the 4.7 months. And that's all I have at this point.
But Diana, if we change the general fund and we address the $1.1 million or ish, whatever's there, does this number then go up by that same $1.1 million?
Well, yes.
In theory?
In theory.
Yeah, I mean,
If in theory, it does.
change.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you don't put more money, yeah, it should.
So we add another $1.1 million, that puts us at 3, that's probably close to the
Yeah, the 4 is.
4.5-ish.
Yeah, I
I'm
think it's,
guessing.
yeah, probably, because you have other reserves that help you in that, so.
Okay.
Any other questions? Before we move on? And I do want to say, and I neglected to say this, and I meant to say this before I started. I do need to publicly thank Diana. She kind of took me under her wing. Diana has a heck of a responsibility. And it is a responsibility that, you know, it can't please everybody all the time. And when I went to her and said, look, Diana, here's my thoughts, here's how I want to try to present this. This is how many administrators is this for you now, trying to go through and present a budget and do a budget book and all that. So I'm trying to be at least mindful that there's going to be somebody else coming in here, you know, in another month or so, and trying to make this work. But she's been extremely helpful in helping me digest this and put this together. And I just wanted to make sure that I recognized that, because I couldn't have done it without her. So one of the things that we did want to show you, and we wanted to show the community, is really the town services. You know, these are numbers on a page that are very significant that you all have to think about. But as a resident, as somebody that lives here or somebody that visits here, well, what do they get? You know, and some of these town services that they get obviously is police and fire and trash pickup and, you know, the PB&Z and permits and sewage and new pipes and you name it, fire department, police department, grass being mowed, all of those things that make us such a great place to live. This is what this looks like. And how much does it cost, you know, per household? Well, Diana figured this number up, and she looked at $350,000, kind of a home value, which we know a lot of homes are way more than that. 2 cars, a sanitation fund, and there was one other one that I didn't write down. I can't remember
No,
what it
2
was.
cars in the road,
2 cars in the road fund.
and then the stormwater. No sanitation.
Okay, I'm
It's
sorry.
not including sanitation.
So that was my fault. I wrote down the
Oh,
wrong
you're right.
thing. But we wanted to show what this looked like in per household. It's an estimate $85 a month per household for all these services that people are getting. And that's significant. I mean, that is something to show the community that yes, things cost a lot, but the things that they're getting for $85 a month is very significant for the quality of their life. So now we're going to get into some department or some general fund expenditures in some department requests, and this is where the department heads will come up and start to have some discussion. But Diane and I wanted to show you the general fund expenditures by departments, and if you look at FY 22-23 and you look at all of the departments and what happens in some of those departments, you're looking at, you know, almost $9 million. You're looking at $8.9 million. If you look at the proposed or the discussion point that we're having today for FY 23-24, you're looking at $10,566,880, which is about a 16.3% difference as far as what we're looking at in that hole that we are trying to fill. When you look at the general government request, and really we label this general government request, but a lot of this is administration. And again, this is where when we start to get into these requests that we want you to kind of digest it, and then we're going to come back to these things and obviously have much more discussion. Because when you look at administration, these are the things that I feel that we need to consider to fund. One is an admin assistant. And I know that I've talked a lot about an admin assistant for the administrator versus a deputy. You're going to have a new administrator. He or she may feel differently, but being in this position now for, I don't know, 2.5 months or however long it's been, I think maybe approaching 20 years. That was a joke, by the way.
It just feels like 20 years.
I think an admin assistant would probably work. The HR risk manager position is something that we've talked a lot about. Diane and I feel the same way. I know the department heads feel the same way. This is a position that honestly has not become a want anymore. This is a need. This position is absolutely a need, and I believe we may need to have more discussion about this position within the next couple weeks versus funding this next fiscal year. Because of some changes that is going to be happening in the finance department. But we did include that into this budget. We've had some discussions about committees, and the committees having some type of budget to be able to use. And again, these amounts that you see, the administrative assistant, the HR, the personnel staffing costs do include the salary and all benefits. So when you see that number, it's just not their salary. That includes all benefits related to that position.
So the committee admin is not a head count.
It is not, that is not a head
That's
count.
just money.
That is money, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Because right now, Diana and I talked about that, there was money set aside for committees at one point, and it's kind of buried somewhere, but we wanted to say, this is what we think for y'all to consider to be able to, so the committees could have some funding to be able to use. The document management system for finance, and that's gonna be a multi-department use for $30,000. We've had some discussions, with Judge Arakis, and as we sat down, he was one of the department heads that Diane and I sat down with, and we looked at his needs, and he is requesting a part-time assistant. And I'm sure that Chief Hoffman can probably touch on this even better than I can, but looking at all of the needs that Valerie has now, talking with the judge, they've had no increase in personnel. They have the full-time, they have the part-time, but their workload has exponentially gotten a lot larger. And it's getting to the point now where, it is affecting output. And he requested another part-time position for, again, discussion. And then you start looking at some of the things for the facility itself there at Town Hall, the exterior painting, doors, shutters, and facilities. I did have quite a bit of conversation with Eric, and we wanted to put that into the budget for consideration, because as you all know, that as we go through the Creech and Associates study and what they're gonna be doing starting next month, all of this is gonna come into play, but we're still gonna be in that building for a while, and we still need to maintain that building. We've also looked at the comprehensive plan that Sabrina is working on, and that $25,000 is half this fiscal year and then half next fiscal year. And there's 2 new events that we would like to do in the town, and it's a kite festival and a street fair that's obviously gonna cost some money. So that is an estimate after talking with Tabitha. We just put this slide up, and I'll just touch on this, and Sabrina, please add anything to this you feel relevant, ma'am, because we just put this up because, again, we wanted you all to see, the 25, it's $50,000 total for that project. We're splitting that between fiscal years, but we wanted to just reiterate to you and to the community that may be watching that this is the planned schedule, and I think we're on track, aren't we, Sabrina, with everything that is moving forward there. PB&Z requests, there were no other substantial requests, or no other requests, really. So Sabrina has kept her budget, basically, flat, and has not asked for any additional resources other than making sure that we get this done. So is there anything that you want me to add to that?
No,
Sabrina? Is that good?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any questions before we move on to Chief Hoffman and the police department requests?
When are you going to discuss these individually?
What I'd like to do, ma'am, is after we go through the presentation, circle back. This probably take us close to lunch, circle back after lunch and go through these individually.
Okay.
If that's okay with
That's
council.
fine.
So, Chief Hoffman, and you can come up here. And I'm sorry, I like standing. And I got it. I'll get these out of the way. Because I know you have your stuff. Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chief.
That's working. Good morning, good morning. I don't know about y'all, that looks a little blurry. Let me see if I can tune that a little bit. Does that look better? Or does that look better?
No.
It's like going to the eye doctor, right?
Yeah.
This or that?
Well played, Kenny, well played.
Get your eyes.
Oh, you know what? It's probably better for those numbers to be blurry, wasn't it? Hold on, wait a minute.
It's supposed to be blue.
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, everybody online that's watching us this morning. I'm going to try to be like the kid at Christmas that knows he's asking for some big stuff, so try not to ask for too much. I've got just a couple of requests to go over. If it's okay with you, Mr. Mayor, I'll just kind of jump around, not go in that order. I think it'll be a little confusing to go in that particular order, but one of the larger things that I've got in the departmental request for the police department this year is the 3 patrol vehicles. Director Adair and I have worked together, spoken a lot about the condition of the police department's fleet, and we have been saying for some time that we needed to moved to 3 vehicles a year. In the capital replacement, used to be 1, then 2, then 1, then 2, then it was 2. And as the fleet has started to age, we're trying to get to 3 to kind of get back on track to a reasonable capital replacement plan. Right now, the police department has got 4 vehicles with over 100,000 miles on them in quite a few years. So all the vehicles that we're looking at in these 3 vehicles were replaced vehicles with over 3 years of life on them and over 100,000 miles. We try to do our best whenever we replace a vehicle to try to bring equipment over, but at the length of time that with the take-home car program that we're able to stretch these vehicles out and get a long life out of them, by the time it's time to replace them, that equipment that's in the car is at the end of its service life as well, particularly the technology pieces of those, the cameras, the radars, and other things that are in there, the tablets and other, the officers, they're in these vehicles for 12 hours a day. They do their reports in the field, so it's their office. They have a lot of equipment in there. The assigned vehicle program continues to demonstrate reduced maintenance costs, fuel consumption, longer vehicle life, and has certainly helped us with our recruiting and retention strategies with the take-home car program. Just want me to just we're just moving through these?
Yes, sir. However you
Okay,
wanna do.
gotcha.
Take your time.
So that's the vehicles that we're asking for. The second piece of this is a mobile computer-aided dispatch software. That's the mobile CAD software. What we have right now is we got like a hodgepodge of different softwares that we're running, particularly in the vehicles. And we've got a really good vendor that we use for our computer-aided dispatch and our records management system. Southern Software is our vendor for that. Then we've got other vendors that we're using for VPN and logging on to where the officers are in the field. They're able to run tags and driver's licenses, and also have the vehicle locator system where dispatch can see where our cars are located in the field and officers can see where each other are. Is a very important part of that. We are trying to add this mobile data part to our existing vendor, which would incorporate us, bring us all under one software program. It will streamline our services. It will also, there'll be some reduction in other things that we're spending right now with those other vendors. We'll be able to drop those, and we'll just have one solution for our vehicles. Some of the advantages to that is that we will be able to, when we run these inquiries, tags, driver's licenses, and other things in the field, when the officers then need to move into a reporting mode for that, it will automatically incorporate that. So that speeds up their reporting process. Time that they're tied up on a particular incident, it just automatically feeds anything that they run right into the reporting system so they can then populate that. So it helps them get back into service quicker, slowing from being slowed down doing the reports and such.
Is there a net savings from replacing those other systems?
There will be, yes, ma'am. We'll be dropping some of the other programs that we have budgeted right now.
Because I assume the 39 is probably a one-time, but then there's an ongoing maintenance use fee.
Yes, ma'am. That is correct.
And that should be lower than what we're paying now?
Yes.
You have a list of the vendors that will be cut.
We will be dropping, Alan Sims is one that we'll be using right now that we use, and I think that's in our detail sheets. Alan Sims, and I can't remember the other one right off the top of my head right now, but we'll be eliminating some of those, one system. This also is an important part of this particular program that I like and I think will benefit is it's got some advanced administrative automatic vehicle locating. So we'll also be able to kind of go back and look at breadcrumb trails of where we're patrolling. This is important to us because then we'll be able to see if there's areas of the town that maybe we're missing in our regular patrol techniques that will show us, there might be a street or a certain area or a part of town that's not getting the attention that it needs. So that way we can go back, look at that administratively and try to help to continue to make sure that our patrol functions are hitting all the areas of the town. So that's something that would be beneficial administratively. That's about it on that. So that is the mobile CAD software piece. Also in here, I've got a request for the wireless camera system to do an expansion on that. A lot of conversation between myself and several members of council that we would like to start to see some of that wireless camera function. It's been so beneficial to us, as you know. It has just paid off in dividends with our public safety efforts and being able to close cases and prevent crime in certain areas. To move some of that camera ability into our parks, our public parks, public restrooms, and also start to get some presence up on Highway 17 in some areas up there. So we are in discussion with the vendor right now, and we would like to ask council to fund an initial push into some of those areas with that $25,000.
How many cameras does that represent?
Well, we don't have an exact number yet because they'll have to, and we don't want to over-engage the vendor right now to start developing that
Right,
plan
right.
until we know whether you guys are feeling good about this, or maybe you want to increase it a little bit. Because there's going to be some infrastructure build that'll be in there. So I'm hoping that we can, and we may start small with certain parks where we've had complaints from residents about any kind of suspicious activity. And then maybe try to do a piece.
What is it, 5, is it 15? I mean, order of magnitude-ish.
Yeah, I'd probably put it in
10-ish,
the 8
maybe?
to 10 range cameras. Yes,
You
ma'am.
had 50 cameras on the pier at 50,000, wasn't it?
Yeah, we have, yeah, but that's all like one little system here. We'll be kind of spreading out all over town. So there'll be some infrastructure costs in that.
Well, and this is in addition to what we just voted ATAX funding for, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Florida or whatever.
the current ATAX funding will stay in the R3 down in our tourist area for an expansion. And that will cover our beach accesses where we have golf cart and LSV parking down through there to continue that. This is moving more into for our residents.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
The parks are everybody. So
What's that?
the parks are everybody. So
Exactly.
Public restroom, everybody.
Right.
Tourists or non-tourists.
Agreed. Yes, sir.
It can
Correct.
be used either way.
And also the highway will be beneficial too. So we do get some requests for footage from up in that area. So the first piece there, that the waterfront patrol officer too, and then the waterfront patrol vehicles is kind of the last thing that I'll go into. And I pitched this last year, and of course, a lot of this depends on the timing of the pier and the completion of the pier and the upfitting of your pier businesses and when that really gets up and running. I think we can all agree that there's going to be some needs down there from a public safety perspective that are going to impact the fire department and the police department. What I am hoping to do, and my vision here, if council agrees that this is kind of a direction we want to go, is I want to create this waterfront patrol district where we will keep dedicated assigned officers down in that R3 area. It would probably be inefficient to try to just post a police officer on your pier because there's other areas that are down there as well. This would generally be, and as we know, our tourist season continues to grow all the way in as our weather is good and it's throughout the year, to have this waterfront patrol area where officers would be assigned to that area. Of course, they'll come out if they need to come out and do backup and other things like that. But that'll be their general responsibility. We want this to be something as we move into a public safety concept for our visitors and our residents as they go down and enjoy the E-District or whatever that may be called in the future. But the bars and the restaurants and other things that are happening down there, our pier, what's going to be happening, those types of events. There's going to be a lot of commercial activity at the pier. But there's also the possibility that a negative element could move into that pier area as well. And we want to have a presence down there to prevent that from ever happening so we don't have to spend a lot of resources trying to fix it. There are certain crimes that can come down into that area. Drug use, sales, drunkenness, DUI that could be there, loitering, vandalism, juvenile delinquency, burglaries, car break-ins, and other things like that. We just don't want that to start. We want to prevent it from ever happening. We are asking council to consider funding 2 full-time police officer positions down there to include an assigned vehicle for those officers, and go ahead and get that up and running. What does the pier look like? I don't know that we exactly know right now. Will those businesses be upfitted? Will all that be up and running this, summer, by August, September? I don't really know, and I know that you guys don't either. So this is something that could be flexible, that it could be moved a little bit. But what I want to mention is that in July 1, if council says, Chief, we like your concept, let's move forward with that. It could take me 10 months to get officers hired through the academy, trained, certified, whatever. Not to mention, right now, we've got a vehicle right now that we hope to get back tomorrow. That is the one that you funded last July 1. It is not even in service yet. That's how long it's taken to procure vehicles, get them upfitted, get the equipment. So that car that you allowed me to purchase last July 1 is still not in service today. So we've got to do some forecasting and planning, particularly with these vehicles and getting the officers up and
So this
running.
135.8, that's 2 vehicles?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Are they patrol cars or beach vehicles, or what kind of vehicles?
So
are they?
these will be patrol cars, because these will still be officers responding to calls for service down in that waterfront area, patrolling, during their time. But we want to have some other patrol modes down there too. We've got the LSV. That was just a tremendous purchase for public safety. But also we've got bicycle patrol and other things. There's all kinds of cool stuff I can try to get down there to have officers be available, not just riding in a car, but have other things, but they'll need to have that car as well. Okay? All right. That's it for the police department.
Is that all?
I told you, big stuff, just a few things.
Big number.
Big numbers. Thank you.
I'm sure there'll be more questions after lunch.
I'll be ready.
So, from the fire department, when you look at the needs of the fire department, I'm going to go through these just very quickly, but there's going to be a couple that I'm going to touch on just a little bit more as we kind of go through the slides. We put down the 4 firefighters, and I'm going to touch on that a little bit more in depth. One of the programs that I want to implement is a DH4 incident management software, which is an incident management tracking system. One of the things I've done in my tenure there is kind of brought the fire department up to the standards of technology that we should be doing for our reporting. We do incident action plans, and we work with Chief Hoffman and develop these plans when we have these large events. God forbid something would happen and we're just scratching things on a piece of paper, that will not look good for me or Chief Hoffman or any of you. So what we do is we do other specialized forms through the NIMS management system. What this will help us do, we have been talking with the police department about this initiative also. We just put it underneath the fire department budget because it's something that we will both be able to use. And it will allow us to develop incident management plans, track it, and be able to use it year to year to forecast some of the changes that we might need to make for these events that we're having. And we have a lot of people, as you all know, that visit the town during these big events. The painting interior of the fire department was something that I asked for last year. Actually, we asked for the interior and exterior. I removed the exterior because as we go through the planning process for a potential municipal complex, there's no sense in spending thousands of dollars to paint the outside. I talked with Eric, we just need to maintain it, and then we'll see what happens there. The inside of the fire station has not been painted since it was new. There's little components, I'm working on rooms at a time, some offices and things, but the inside of the fire department needs to be done. Our gutters are leaking terrible. And I've talked with Eric, the $17,000 is an estimate that he has got. That's actually to replace all the gutters on the fire station. You better watch where you're walking if you're going into the fire station because you're going to get wet if you're going underneath those gutters. The second set of PPE, I will touch on a little bit further. And then the garage doors, there was no true maintenance program on our garage doors. So we need to have that because the $10,500, which is the amount to be able to maintain those, and they would be on a schedule. Those springs are thousands of dollars if they break. If we maintain them, we're going to be able to make those doors last a lot longer. So one of the things I want to touch on is the 4 people. As you all are well aware, we did not get the SAFER grant, but even though we didn't get the SAFER grant, there's still the need that council recognized for our 4 firefighters. The need has not changed whatsoever. You all recognize that. It is very unfortunate that we did not get the mechanism to help us fund those 4 firefighters. But we're still running with 2 every day. You just heard them go out. So, and they're still running with 2 people. So I just wanted to just kind of circle back around and talk about the why very quickly, because I think you all know the why. I've probably beat that to death. But I looked at NFPA section 1201, which is the standard for providing fire protection to the public. And there's 2 bullets that stick out. I mean, that's a long standard, but it's the model for analyzing the personnel needed to achieve the level of service, and it outlines the scope and duties along with the time requirements to achieve a safe response. We do not have a response time problem in the town of Surfside Beach. If that rescue engine and our folks are in that station, we are there like that. But what we do run into a problem with, and we do rely on automatic and mutual aid, is making sure that we have the appropriate personnel to fulfill the responsibilities of the operational guidelines to. Sorry about that. Why that is doing that.
The technology,
The technology. So, because I hit a button. So we don't have the appropriate people to be able to do that on our rescue engine. So that's,
Don't we run requiring a mutual aid under that situation?
so automatic and mutual aid does
Right.
come, but there's a time response element that you have to factor into that. It's not like that, but they are coming at some point.
But if we know we don't have the manpower and you're called out and it is a true fire,
Yes,
immediately that call would go out to Horry County, correct?
absolutely.
Okay.
They get dispatched at the same time. The thing to remember about that, and that's a great point, Mr. Drake, is that they're 7 to 8 minutes, and we've done the analysis how long it takes them to get here. And I'm going to reinforce that point here in a second, but that's a good thought because we do rely on them to do that.
Chief,
Yes,
do they offer that safer grant for the firefighters every year, or is it just a 1-year deal?
No.
They're off and on
they offer that every year.
every year?
That is a
It's gonna be-
possibility.
We can actually put in for it again this year.
There is a possibility. I need to see when it closes.
Is that
But
gonna
there
be a
could
financial need on the areas that safer grants go to? In other words, you got a deprived area, you got a low income.
Oh, yeah, there's
We're a rich area on paper, we're a rich area in tourism, we're a rich area over here.
yes.
So we would never qualify. I don't know if we'll never qualify, but chances of
I
qualifying.
would never say never. I can tell you this, it took, I've talked to the fire chief in Myrtle Beach. It took him 5 cycles to get his safer grant. He applied
And we've only done 1.
5 times and we've only done 1.
Right.
So we could do that, but the fact of the matter is, all of that comes into play. I mean, it does. They look at all of that when you look at the safer grant and all of the criteria for that. And I'm not sure when the safer grant even closed. It may have already closed. I'm not sure. I'll have to look at that.
Can you
Because of the
can you
time.
apply though for the salaries to be retroactive?
No, ma'am.
Like if we've already hired the 4,
No, ma'am.
then, a safer grant would say we're gonna hire an additional 4.
Yes, ma'am. So if we hire 4, you can't retroactive back. It would be for those 4. So that was unfortunate, but again, the need for the firefighters is still there. And here is why the need is still there and will not change. And, the times that we've been running with 2 has been way too long. When you look at NIST studies that are done, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and you look at effective assembly of firefighting force, you look at that response, you look at what is there. The typical Surfside Beach construction and the size of homes. Most of these homes are lightweight constructed. I don't have to explain to you all the size of the homes that are down on the boulevard and really everywhere in this town. Large, small, you have it, but a lot of them are lightweight constructed homes. And that plays significance into the time temperature curve when it comes for us to be able to run a call because of the climate that we work in. There's always a wind. You look at the weather and you look at the BTU production. People have more stuff in their houses than they've ever had. You all need to ride with us a little bit and just go on EMS calls. And I'm sure Chief Hoffman can attest, they're jacked up. There's so much stuff in there. So you take the climate, you take the BTU production of stuff, and then you look at lightweight construction. The time for flashover used to be around 14 minutes. Now it's about 8. So you factor in the time of recognition of the emergency, calling 911, dispatching the call, reflex time of the firefighters to get dressed. And I can tell you our guys are pretty good. They're 1 minute to 1.5 minutes getting out that door. And then driving to the scene. Well, guess what? Even right here with our response time, we're still 5, 6 minutes. I mean, we're still time compressed. And then you add the Horry County units, it's problematic because the tasks that we do is hose line deployment, search and rescue, the ventilation, command, and there's a lot of other tasks that I require our firefighters to do. Multiple hose lines on multiple floors, ladders on all 4 sides. I mean, there's a lot of pieces that goes along with that. So when you look at the study, I pulled this study up because I thought this would be significant for you to look at instead of me just saying, I need more people, I need more people. Well, this is the true why we need more people. When you look at studies that was done by NIST and overall use of your firefighters, when you have a 3-person crew, because you're all thinking, Rob, what can one more person do? Well, here's what one more person can do versus 2. Overall scene time is 25% faster. Just the whole scene and all the tasks getting done is 25% faster. The time to water on the fire is 6% faster, which is very significant in the type of construction that we have. Ground ladders and ventilation is 25% faster. Primary search and rescue is 6%. Hose line stretch time is 19%. So you are exponentially reducing that percentage and that time to be able to go in and prevent flashover from killing the occupants and the firefighters. So we can do a whole lot more just with one more person, because right now the driver and the firefighter is doing all of it. And the driver should be staying at the pump panel, so if there's an incident at the pump, they can fix it. If they're doing other tasks, they can't fix that problem. It allows for more aggressive fire attack. It's greater potential for property preservation. Yes, we want to save people. We want the firefighters to be safe, but we want to save your house. I mean, we want to try and save your property, and it's tough for us to do that with the people that we have on the unit now. And it's just an overall safer environment for all of our firefighters and really the community members. I talk a lot about firefighters because, you know, I want to make sure my family goes home at the end of their shift. But I also want to make sure that the people that come and visit here go home to where they live, and that all of you that live here are safe for if something would happen, God forbid, in your house, that we could put that fire out that much quicker. So yes, it's a shame that we did not get the SAFER grant. And I was really hoping for that. And I thought our chances were very, very good. And, but it is what it is. But what hasn't changed is the need. And we can certainly have more questions about that as we, you know, circle back around after lunch. Next up is John with Public Works. Yes, sir.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, John.
It looks like a long list, but you all know Public Works has various divisions and we operate out of various different budgets. So just bear with me. I'm going to go over these one at a time. The first one on our list is a replacement to our steam jetty, our power washer at Public Works. It's a relatively small expenditure, but that is still the original one that was there when I came to the town 13 years ago. And it's the amount of repairs it's requiring necessitates a replacement at this time. It's $6,500 out of the general fund. The second is a regular capital replacement for a mower for the street department. About 10 years old, $18,000 for a gas mower, replacing 911, which will be sold on Gov Deals. And we usually get about $5,000-6,000 back on a sale on Gov Deals for a mower, especially now they're a little higher than they used to be. The third request is something we had in the budget last year, which we took out. It was deferred, $25,000 to have the floor redone at Public Works. We have that old tile similar to the one in here, that the entire finish is gone off of it, of all the tracking in and out. The building was built in 95, so that's how many years it's been walked on. And if we're gonna rip it up and just go with bare concrete polished floors, like you have like in Home Depot or something like that, it'd probably be more prudent for the kind of environment that we have over there. And for painting the office area, $25,000 in the general fund. The one new employee request that I do have is for our grounds division. As you know, we are tasked every year with more and more responsibilities for the grounds division, from landscaping beds, Highway 17, additional Christmas lights, changing Surfside Drive to various colors during various times of the year, you name it. Huckabee Complex, bathrooms, their task list is endless. And to keep up that level of service, what's required, it's been a long time since we asked for a person.
What is an LEO?
A light-
Clearly not a law enforcement.
No, no. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
That budget be fine with me.
It's unfortunate that the acronym is the same, but it's a light equipment operator. Which is,
John, didn't we just add someone to handle 17 a year and a half ago or 2 years?
no, we never did. We
I
talked
thought
about
We
it.
talked about it, didn't we? We never.
No, we talked about it when the landscaping was done on
Yeah.
17,
Yes.
that I would come back to council and ask for a person to handle it. And that would be part of the additional responsibilities, the grounds has to deal with. But last year we absorbed it in-house, but that plus 100 other things that we have to do on a regular basis.
Did
We never added anybody.
you ever get the contract with the baseball field redone to clarify all the money we're spending over there doing all this work? And especially the one over here on this side of 17.
I don't think it's been resolved
It has
yet.
not.
That needs to get resolved.
It does need to get resolved, and that is something, Mr. Drake, that was, quite frankly, was a mess that I've gotten cleaned up, and I'm gonna get that done.
Because that's a pile of money that we're spending for.
Yeah.
And the field over here on this side, it looks good, but it's never used.
No, granted, but we still have to cut the grass and
That's
the
what I'm
maintenance
saying.
is still there, yeah. But to your point, if you were to take Huckabee field maintenance off the table,
Right.
fertilizing, striping,
Right.
cutting grass,
Right.
that would probably negate this need right here.
I agree.
Um,
Go ahead.
John, I didn't mean to interrupt you, and I just want to clarify something. So as that was buried in a lot of stuff, whatever, as I have read through that to get that done, from what I have read in my best memory is that they are still asking in the contract for Public Works to maintain the fields and do all that. I think I'm right on
I think
that.
you're right.
I think they're still asking in the contract. I just need to it needs to be cleaned up, to tell you the God's honest truth. You all
Yeah.
have not seen the latest version that Sherry finally found for me and I've gotten to review, but I believe it is still asking for John and Public Works to maintain all of
They
that.
need to take care of that.
So that'll be something that I need to get wrapped up and get done.
Yeah,
Let
that's
them
a
use the
good,
property, they can handle that.
yeah, as a contractual matter,
Yes.
it's up to
Yes.
council how you handle
How that
the
gets
youth
into the
association.
decision of council, yeah,
Right.
how we move forward. But I don't think you all have even seen the latest version that I
No.
finally found,
Oh, we
that
have-
you all
No.
need to see.
Well, that'd be
So,
good
yes.
before we get further into this detail. Yeah, go ahead.
Which we were supposed to do something before the first of the year when the contract renewed,
Yes, sir.
but that shit.
But you all will definitely see that as you're going through your decision points on how this is gonna work with John.
Yeah.
Opening day is Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But the same thing with the field on this side of 17. If we're gonna use it for something with Tabitha, great. But to be a baseball field that's never used makes no sense.
But we'd still have to cut the grass.
Well,
yeah, it's,
I agree, but it's a
and,
center field, everything else out there looks like
yeah, and just, Martin Field is in a similar situation as
Yeah.
Huckabee is, as far as being encumbered by a lot of recreation grants.
Yeah.
So you'd probably have to use it for recreation.
Well, you could use it, but let's
Yeah.
use it. Put something together, or soccer, something, do something with the community.
But the way it is right
Softball,
now, we're
softball.
restricted from using it due to Huckabee takes first place in it. We'd have to ask their permission to use it.
I think in the last discussion we had with the youth association, they
They were
said
fine
that
with
they,
that.
they were fine with us.
They didn't really.
Yeah, but that's, I'm saying the contract still says
Part
that.
of the contract.
They said that if we want to use it, we have to go through Huckabee.
But we need to get all those details worked out.
Yeah, I think that probably has to come
Yes, sir.
pretty quick,
And we will.
Because
But that ain't got nothing to do.
Someone who-
with the field.
Yeah,
walk
well,
by
we
there all
still
the
have to
time, it'd
make
look better to
things
see a local citizens out there using it for,
I'll cut the grass.
softball, little softball league or church outing or something like that, and then nothing.
Yeah,
Or
well,
make a dog park. I don't care what you do, use it for something.
Well, it'll come before you all and you all can look through at least
Yeah.
what I have now.
Make a dog park out.
well,
Do something.
assuming everything is status quo,
Frisbee
that's why
time.
I'm asking for the person in this budget. And we'll see how that plays out. The next item is an item, it's a light dump truck for the street department on our capital replacement program. This truck has appeared in the last 4 or 5 budgets, and we've deferred it at least 4 times that I'm aware of, to replace a 2000 model Chevy light dump truck that we have at Public Works, which is time to phase out. It's 23 years old and it's beginning to have mechanical headaches. We held off as long as we could. The next thing in hospitality is, I've already gotten this grant for about $5,000 for Memorial Park furniture, such as picnic tables, benches, and things like that. We'll spend 7, we'll get 5 back. That's pretty much a no-brainer. Then you
Okay,
have,
so again, this is not a net number, this is a
You-
gross number.
you have to budget the full expenditure, and then what you get back is a revenue after the fact.
It's 2,000 or 5,000.
Yeah, you got a budget to 7. Yeah, you got a budget to 7. The next item is to, which we've already signed the contract on this, to start the engineering for the Myrtle Swash pedestrian bridge on the beach side that was taken out with Hurricane Matthew. It's been in the process of being engineered. This is a carryover, some of the contract this fiscal year, some of it next fiscal year, structural and civil engineering. We're not going to actually bid that construction until we have the Ned's Cove litigation wrapped up, but this is just for the continuation of the engineering that's been started already.
Where's that at?
And when's the litigation supposed to?
That's getting real close. I know Drew Butler from Richards and Plowden, who met with you at the last council meeting. He went to court and had discussions with the opposing attorney this last week, and he's gonna come back to the town with some recommendations. They continued that hearing based on a potential settlement. So that should be in the very near future settled. So we're just gonna continue on with the engineering of this contract to engineer that bridge. It's a complicated, it's extra long, longer than the rest of them, so that's why it needs a little more attention. But this is a continuation of an existing contract we have with the engineering firm. I put in here in hospitality, the Fuller Park restroom over there by the tennis courts. We have that restroom in Fuller Playground. That is the last one of the old style, the cinder block smelly construction that from about 30 years ago. I'd like to get that one replaced. If that's acceptable to council, that'll be the last public restroom that we would replace with that new style. And it's about $85,000 or so installed with plumbing and electrical work. So hopefully you will consider that.
Is that the last restroom we need?
Yeah, the last, every other restroom we had existing has been replaced except for that one. I had this in last year's budget, but it was taken out. So this is the second time you're seeing that.
What do we think the life is of the new ones?
I can't see them ever, I mean, everything in there is replaceable. If the toilet breaks, we can unbolt it and put another one in there.
All this concrete.
Yeah, the buildings are all reinforced concrete, the walls, the roof, it's all preformed concrete, so I really can't see, we might get 40, 50 years out of it. Next item on the list is the actual construction of the North Side Drainage Project Phase 2. We moved all the construction money for this project into next fiscal year. My hope had been to have this bid out in February, March, and actually by April have it awarded, but the twist of this whole thing is that I applied last year for $750,000 in South Carolina Office of Resiliency ARPA money, the recovery money that they were offering. They came back to me in January when I was still waiting for the permits, and they said the town doesn't meet our criteria for the grant because you don't have a high enough percentage of low moderate income, and the cost benefit analysis score isn't high enough. The amount of people that you're helping, they do a cost benefit analysis, so you don't score well enough to get the grant. I said, oh, that sucks. So they came back to me several weeks ago. They called me up and they said, and I was just about to get in the permits, and they said, have you bid this out yet? And I said, well, I'm about to next week. And they said, well, don't bid it out yet because we're going to relook at your project, because I really berated them about it. We had a lot of back and forth about why we were denied. I asked for all their documentation. I asked for their analysis. I was questioning all their assumptions. So they came back to me and they said, we're gonna take another look at the project to see if we can get it included in the funding. And lo and behold, they did. They included it in the funding. So we're gonna get $750,000 back for the drainage project. The problem with that is that now they become the administrator of the contract. So I have to send the bid documents to them, which I did already. It has to be tweaked to meet a state office of the state engineer specifications. So they have to look at it, and then it gets reviewed for up to 45 days by the office of the state engineer. And then the SCORE, the Office of Resiliency, bids it out for me. And then they back bill the town. That's how they handle these federal grants. A lot of hoops to jump through. But we're getting $750,000 out of it. So being that part of the drainage project takes place in the R3, a piece of 14th North down by Ocean Boulevard is involved, we're not likely to do construction on this until after Labor Day. But I think the juice is worth the squeeze because we're getting a significant amount of money. This will be a $2 million project. And so far we've gotten $500,000 from the county recovery money and now $750,000. So the hit on our stormwater fund will be less. And that'll be the last thing that's billed is our storm. We'll use the grant money first. So because of that, we moved all the construction money for this project into next fiscal year because construction is not going to happen this fiscal year. We had some money budgeted for this fiscal year, but we're just moving it down the line. But I think when residents ask about it, I think that's a pretty good reason to delay it. Okay. That's why
So
that's.
this 1.5 was originally in the 22-23 budget?
It was less. We had it broken like half and half.
Okay.
But now we just pushed the whole thing construction-wise. We're still doing engineering, so we spent some engineering money this year. But the construction, actual construction contract will be all next year. Next item, we met with Sandy Cooper. Sandy Cooper came and presented us with our semi-annual check about a month ago for the franchise fund. We had conversations subsequent to that, talking about the next phase of underground wiring, which in your council package for next Tuesday, you're going to have a decision paper in there, which Rob is going to present to you all, giving us direction to move forward with this engineering on the next phase. You basically have two options, and Rob will explain this on Tuesday. You have the 3rd to 9th North, okay, which is the much less expensive option, or you can continue 9th South to Melody, which is significantly more, $7 million more. To put things in perspective, the cost of these projects, the first one we did from 3rd to 3rd back in 2013 was about an $800,000 project. The next one we did in 2017, we finished, which was 3rd to 9th South, was about $1.2 million. This next phase, 3rd to 9th North, is going to be over $4 million. Sandy Cooper is saying that just transformers are about 4 times the price that they were just a couple of years ago. So this is going to be an expensive deal. So the proposal is to move forward with the engineering. It's a 3-year process. You have a year of engineering, then you have 2 years of construction in the off season. First year, they put all the conduits in. Second year, they pull all the wires and take down the poles. That's how these projects go. So we would like to move forward with the engineering on the 3rd North, the 9th North. The council approves that on Tuesday and get into that right away. After that, this will require us to go into the red, which we're allowed to do on the franchise fund. They let you go 3 years of accruals into the red on your franchise fund with no penalty and no interest. And then after this project is done, then it'll be a bunch of years building it back to zero, and then enough to get the next project done. It'll be 2034, 2035 before you can do another one, based on the current costs. Maybe it'll change, who knows? But we haven't done one in 6 years, and it's time to start engineering the next one, if you all agree. And
So what's the $100,000 in that?
that would be basically the beginning of the engineering. We'll probably sign an engineering contract. It'll be over $100,000.
And that can't come out of our franchise fee? The engineering?
Yeah, actually, it is reimbursable under the franchise fund, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, you have to spend it to
You
get
have
it
to
back.
spend it, yeah.
As well as the other communications companies, HTC, Spectrum, they all contribute at the end. to the, when the billing comes in, City Cooper pays the lion's share of it. And then the smaller utilities also, if they want to participate, they pay some of it also, a much smaller percentage. City Cooper assumes all the excavation costs and all that, the lion's share of it. So that's $100,000 to start the Ocean Boulevard ECT engineering. And that would come out of capital project. Also out of capital projects is our next year's paving job that we'll do next spring. I'll be going to CTC in the next couple of months and asking for the next phase of paving money. And so we'll spend about $480 with engineering, which we have to budget, and we'll probably get about $400 back out of that, which is standard year's paving for me, about usually 2 to 2.5 miles of paving.
Well, but we saw this year's program, we had what, 470 budgeted and came back and said, yeah, we're actually gonna spend 590. Should we not be considering 590 as the going rate of these things, or is the scope
I want to
significantly
reduce the
different?
scope a little bit.
Okay.
I'm gonna, for next time. But, I have a very good relationship with the County Transportation Committee, and I know about how much I can ask for. I might be able to get a little more, we'll see.
Okay.
But I planned the project based on how much money I get. I try to make it where they pay roughly 80% of the bill.
Okay.
So it's sort of like a shell game.
Don't say that to
Okay, John.
Well, every funding source has its quirks that you have to deal with and navigate, and I've tried to do that over the years.
I just wanna make sure you're not shortchanging it.
Too much information.
Yeah, no, we've paved, just so you all know, since 2011, we've paved roughly 80 to 85% of all roads in town, which is about close to 70 miles, 60 to 70 miles.
What's
of
on
road.
tap to be included in this one?
The one that we're starting in the next couple of weeks,
No.
or next
the one
year.
is-
I haven't submitted
Oh,
that
okay,
yet.
okay.
They blow that asphalt for Pinewood, the potholes.
Yeah, I've already, the Grand Strand Water
The
and Sewer.
dirt, we got a partial dirt road down there, so I just let them get a little asphalt.
Yeah, Grand Strand Water and Sewer has to repair that. The next thing on the list would be sanitation fund, a new front-loading refuse truck to replace 306, our older one. That's the ones that picks up the containers, the 6 and 8 yard containers. That's the normal part of our capital replacement program. We actually swapped this out with we had a knuckle boom slated for next year, and then this truck the year after. But the way availability is we're not going to be able to get this truck the following year because Mack is only making so many. So we have a line on a truck, which I'm actually going to come to council in a couple of weeks and ask for the council to authorize Rob to sign a letter of intent that we're going to budget this truck for next year so they could start and put it in, if you're not on that production queue, if your name isn't on there with at least a letter of intent to the company, you're not going to get a truck. So that's why this is in there. It'll be somewhere from $375,000 to $390,000 for that front loading truck. Replaces 306. Again, that's the sanitation fund, not the general fund. And the last item on the list, I have in the sanitation fund also, I have $20,000 in there. We have those of you who've been out to Scipio Lane, maybe you got some of that pier wood. We have that tent out there. The tarp on the tent is dry rotted and shot and gone. It's all on the ground, broken into pieces. We've gotten estimates to repair it anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 to put a new cover on that. It's pretty big. It's about 65 by 50, big tent. So I put 20,000 in there for tent repairs because that's where we keep all our new carts and some other things that need to be on the cover. Hopefully we can get it for less than that. I might be able to get a new one for less than that, but we'll see. So that's why that's in the sanitation fund.
What about just like a metal carport kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a possibility. I've been looking into new
That might
ones.
be more durable than canvas.
Quonset hut or something.
Yeah, well, that was designed, that tent was reused. Actually, the fire trucks were under that tent back when the fire station was being built. That tent was over here where the skateboard park is, and the fire equipment was kept in there. And once the firehouse was built, we moved it out to Scipio Lane, and we use it for shelter for the things we don't want to dry rot. But there's a good possibility I can get a brand new one, not so tall, you know what I mean?
Right.
But about the same size, from maybe the $15,000 range to $20,000 range. That's why I figured $20,000 would probably be appropriate to put into the
So
budget.
you think this will last longer than a metal building, or metal roof building shed?
Well, I'm not saying it would last longer, it would be a lot cheaper. A metal building, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Not a full building, just the cover, like a carport shed or something that you get.
Well, they don't really handle the wind load so good unless they're open on the sides. We really don't want it open on the sides.
This closes completely into the tarp. Closes completely open.
Yeah, it's open on one side, but they're designed sort of like a bubble to deflect the wind more so than take it. They have ones with flat walls and they have ones that are curved, and I would pick the one that would be most appropriate for that environment. In any event, it would be cheaper than a building. Although if you want to fund a building, I'll be happy to.
Take it away from them.
I'd be happy to build a
When
building.
you take it away from them.
Well, that's
Take that money away from kids.
That's it.
Well, you and Keith go outside and fight for it and come back at us.
Well, the problem with, I'd love to put a building at Scipio Lane. The only problem with the building is that it's unmanned. And other neighbors out there have had things broken into, because it's unattended, really. Somebody can hop the fence, if there's something with a door on it, they can pop it open to see what's in there. An open tent that's open on one side, you can see it's just garbage cans, We're just trying to keep it out of the sun. But a building would be nice if we ever needed to expand and put offices out there, I guess you could do that. But having an unmanned location with a closed building, I don't think is the way to go.
Do you have electricity out there?
I think we do, yes. We have 2 power poles and we have 1 outlet on one of the poles, like just for, we could put an office trailer out there. We talked about that once, putting an office trailer out there. In fact, we came close last year with Bill. He never pursued it, but we had it, the Solid Waste Authority, after a hurricane, we take our vegetative debris out there as a temporary staging area so we can get it off the street, and then we haul it out to the landfill with larger trucks. The Solid Waste Authority has actually proposed over the last couple of years, because they don't have a site on the south end for an emergency area, a chipping site. So there's a proposal that and I brought this to the last council, I believe, some of you might have been around then, where we allow them after a hurricane to set up their south end chipping site for everybody to deliver to, and then they would haul it off at their expense to the landfill, and they would clean it up when they were done, and we would have dumping priority, so we wouldn't hold my trucks up on a line. So I think it's a good deal for the town, and they would clean it up and they would clear what needs to be cleared and grade what needs to be graded, all at their dime, not ours. So that's something I'll be
If you do away with the building out of Huckabee, the side shed and all out there, have you already done that or what?
at Huckabee. The buildings have all been torn down.
All in
All the
gone,
sheds
right?
in the back have been torn down.
Yes.
And what we've replaced them with is 3 40-yard containers, like shipping containers for storage, that we rent for about $300 a month, until the council decides what they want to do permanently.
Buy them for less than that.
Could we not look at doing something in Scipio for all of that, move all that to Scipio? If you put a building out at Scipio or some kind of container out there? Could we not just, since you have that rental sheds out there, why couldn't we look at moving that all to Scipio and putting something out there?
Well, we could, but what would be the reason for that?
Well, you'd take in the building that you got out of Scipio that you're renting these all sheds for, all these storage bins. You said you had 3 at $300 a piece, that's $900 a month.
No, 300 for all of them.
$100.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So,
Yeah, so we have 3 containers sitting at Huckabee right now
yeah,
with all the grounds equipment in it on a paved area.
yeah.
And you think we should move them out to Scipio, the 3 containers?
I ain't saying that's a good plan, I'm just saying, have you ever thought about putting it all, since you're wanting something out there to cover trash cans, and you need something out here to take care of your lawnmowers and all over here, why not in a general location for all of
If
them?
it was a building, I would say, yeah, it's a good idea, yeah, at Scipio.
Yes.
Are
Put a
you-
building there to put everything in, that would be fine.
Are you planning on putting anything back at Huckabee?
Well, that's where we left it last time we discussed, when council authorized the demolition of the buildings at Huckabee due to their condition,
Yes.
Eric Robinson had gotten quotes to build a new building at Huckabee
Right.
that encompassed everything. And I
A
think,
metal building.
yeah, the cost was $100,000, if I remember, $400,000, which actually, there was a number in one of the budgets on the side for that. But I haven't been given the green light on that yet. Because the council didn't know what they were doing with Huckabee. You know, that was when you were meeting with the sports people. Yeah, so why build a building if, that's why we've been renting the containers. You know, what the future of Huckabee looks like. But if we could build a building at Scipio someday and put everything under one roof,
Big bet.
but again, it's out in the middle of nowhere, unmanned, you know, there's more of a chance of somebody breaking into it.
Wouldn't we do better to try to expand where you are now on Sandy?
I would love to expand on Sandy Lane. We're tucked into a very tight space with what we have. The lot next door that's wooded was for sale at one time a few years ago, you remember, and then they took it off the market. They couldn't agree on selling it. You know, I would love any, you know, any suggestions. If anybody has seen anything that we can expand into somewhere, you know, we certainly don't, you know, the building that we're in was not designed for what we're using it for. You know, I think Public Works had like 15 employees at the time. Now we have, you know, 27. But you know, more space somewhere would be great. You know, I just don't know what the right answer is. You know, because you know, question A has to be answered before we get to question B.
Absolutely.
And we always seem to get hung up on question A. And that's really all of our requests for the year and the justification for it. I'm sorry to take all your time, side discussions and all that.
That's good.
But
Just 2.8 million.
yeah, it's all a matter of right time and money. That solves every problem.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Does council need a break, restroom or anything like that?
If we're looking at 11:30, I can wait.
Probably somewhere around 11:30, yeah. I think Larry's gonna be on his way here, I believe, at 11:30. So, okay. All right, so moving right along, going into the non-departmental requests. And Luke is going to be here to discuss this. So as we loop back this afternoon, Luke will be able to discuss this further. But we wanted to put the Heritage Digital into the non-departmental requests. And as Diana has alluded to, you know, we asked them to come up with a plan that looked at computers, that looked at replacement schedules, that looked at all of the network equipment and everything that needs to be replaced. And they've come up with a pretty significant number with that. You can see $123,000 for monthly maintenance, $144,000 to replace network equipment, and the general fund for new employee computers is $6,500, which is what we will have to do. But I wanted Luke to be here to be able to discuss that with you all this afternoon. To explain that.
Question.
Yes,
This
ma'am.
is in addition to the 60,000 that's under the police request.
This
correct?
is in addition. Yes, ma'am. This is the totality of a replacement package in the network. Good question. Yes, ma'am. So Luke is going to discuss that further with you all this afternoon. The facade grant is something I know the business committee is really pushing. It's something that I think we need to. So we put $25,000 in there. HVAC replacement, we need to have a line item in the budget for that. Eric just replaced one on Town Hall, or did two on Town Hall, and they have skyrocketed in cost because I think there's some new federal guidelines, I believe, that have come into place for, I think, use of electric is what Eric was telling me. So it has really made those go up. The Floral Clubhouse demolition and the Civic Center roof are two other items in the non-departmental request for consideration and discussion.
So the facade grant is in addition to the committee
Yes, ma'am.
administration
Yes, ma'am.
expenses.
Yes, ma'am.
So in theory, that line item could be 55.
It could be. Yes, ma'am.
So it was decided that Floral can't be saved.
That Yeah, from what I was talking with Eric, and I don't know if John's been in the loop on that, but talking with Eric, I think that might have been something that was brought up, was that last year?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
The issue is that we've done enough repairs on that building where we've exceeded, or we're about to exceed substantial improvement under our FEMA guidelines. So you couldn't do any more
Yeah.
repairs or renovations to that building without elevating it up to the proper height under the base flood
We
elevation.
had 5 years.
You do.
So in 5 years, we can do improvements on it, and our 5 years is almost up. That's what I was just. that's
Well, the
my
5 years is
understanding.
not completely up. Some of the 5 year will drop off this year, but you still have 4. You have to keep going every 5 years. Now, I haven't been asked about Floral Lake since last year, so, I mean, I can check and let you know.
Because I mean, if
Where
we
we
do
are
the- if we do the
percentage-wise.
$15,000 and tear it down, then we're gonna have to elevate it. Nobody's gonna want an elevated clubhouse.
Right.
But I mean, that's
Yeah.
my personal opinion.
Yeah, there might be an opportunity to do some things,
Right.
you know, because some things might have dropped off, but essentially why we can't do a lot to it.
And that's why.
But I can get those numbers for you. I'll be glad
We
to.
can, absolutely.
Spring, last year when we discussed this, didn't we discuss that the building wasn't worth the maintenance? I mean, what the overall fix of the building was?
Yes,
The
you're
property
correct.
taxes.
We had our, building inspector at the time go and do a structural exam of it, and he actually, recommended it be removed because
Right,
of the
because
structural
it was-
integrity.
The building's worth less than it was to cost of fixing. it.
That's correct. You're exactly right.
And I thought back then we had sort of set a budget, at the same time we set a budget for town hall to be torn down. I thought there was some kind of budget in there for them buildings to be torn down at the same time, was they not?
No, I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
I wasn't made aware of
Okay.
that.
I mean, it's something we could look into,
Okay.
but I'm not sure. No, sir. And then Diana is going to come up and go over our special revenue funds and go through those. Or actually, she's gonna sit there and go through.
Okay, as all of you know, with the special revenue funds, in almost all in all cases, pretty much, the revenue covers whatever your expense, by whatever means, either we buy it directly, or we transfer the money to general fund to cover things that general fund covers. So there's 2 different mechanisms, but in almost all cases, this money is, what comes in is what we spend. We have more than enough, not more than enough, well, it's adequate, it's not like general fund. So accommodations is the money that comes from the state based on what everybody pays when they go to pay their accommodations, which is 2%. They send us our piece after they give everybody else in the state a piece of our money. It's just the way, they call it the Robin Hood clause for a good reason, and that's exactly what it's called. We give money out to everybody, and then at the end of the year, if they have enough that comes back, they'll give us a piece of that money that we give to everybody else back. Everybody gets a minimum amount. Since we're a big provider of it, as is the 3 of us on the coast, that's how we get, what happens to us. So I propose that, I think that we bring about $980,000 in ATAX, which is pretty comparable to what we got this year. And we're not putting a lot of growth into anything, it's pretty much standard. Because we are losing more and more houses to permanent residents, but as the cost to rent them goes up, the ATAX goes up, so, but it's not in proportion. So that's why you kind of stay flat. You're losing houses, but you're paying more for your rent, so you pay more in ATAX. So interest is a nominal money. The $5,000 is usually what we collect for people wanting to be in the barbecue festival. So we show it this way as revenue that's coming in. And then we have the sale of fixed assets, which is the Kubota for the police department, which is a standard purchase that we make every year. That comes out, that is also a gain. So expenditures, we have departmental expenses and, I thought I had put that in. Oh, I guess I just have the same numbers. For all the departments, we're gonna spend we're gonna spend $193,000 on departmental things, which is just various, the Kubota, various, most of it for police and fire. Which I guess we'll get some more detail on that. The chamber hits 30%, which is $265,000 of the 980, or actually 960. We have grants for the 3 people that ask for grants, and you'll notice on the next page that they asked for 16,000, and the committee said 5. So those are the numbers that I've used in there are what the committee recommended. You are absolutely can override anything you want, it's just a recommendation. So that's totally up to you. We have enough excess funds to do that. The transfer to general fund is a number that we have not done that much in the past, but because ATAX is providing us with a lot more money. When I first came here, ATAX was probably $250,000 a year, and we're up to $1 million. So things have really taken off. So we have more money available now. We're not putting all of it towards the pier, which we're also not doing. So we can put more money up to supplement general fund for police and fire and for any event type thing, which is what we're going to do next, which is the plan that I haven't had at this moment. Then we have $50,000 for the pier because way back when we took on the loan from Chase, we had allocated that so much would come from hospitality, so much would come from accommodations, and the rest would come from the pier. Hospitality is doing the pier's piece at the moment because the pier's not making any money. But we still have to cover that debt of $350,000. So most of that is being covered by hospitality, which is a bigger fund. And then the advertising and marketing is just, according to keep ATAX legal, that's really what you're supposed to do, is advertise for events, advertise for your town, advertise to get tourists to come to events, visit, whatever. So that's what that money is for. And then the 30,000 for the 30% for Myrtle Beach Chamber is just so we recognize that they are the person that is taking our 30%. That is required by law.
Diana, I noticed that we've taken out of the transfers from ATAX and hospitality tax, the beach renourishment for this year.
Yes, ma'am, and
I assume that's knowingly and
it is.
meant to do that.
Well, what happened is, apparently 2 years ago, which I totally forgot, we had already taken it out of the ordinance, and I had put it in last year. But now, since we know they're gonna come do beach renourishment and we're getting 100% of the money, this is an assumption on my part, do we wanna keep money going into that fund when we are not gonna need it? So if this funding for beach renourishment, John, help me here, I think it's gonna be in the next year, otherwise it wasn't gonna be till 25 or 26, so we put money in this year, but I wasn't gonna put any more in unless you really think so. And I think somewhere I have in here with the balance, I think it's 700,000 now, right now. I don't see any reason to keep adding to it. You can also put it back if you want, but you'd have to put it back from the funds that came.
But we don't know what it's gonna be in a couple of years, if it's still gonna be 100%. We know the next one's 100%.
Correct.
Because of the hurricane and all that, but we don't really know what the next time's gonna be.
So I mean, that money saved, in my opinion, will be on the 20 years, if you just leave it there, it's not bothering anybody, it's not hurting anybody. Leave it in capital projects as money that we put aside, and when the next time comes, we'll see.
Okay.
So that's what I did, I didn't put any money in this year.
Okay.
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
It's building interest, isn't it?
It's at the state, so it's earning, actually, it's earning more money than most of us, all of us would like to earn what the state's paying on that money, trust me. Yes, it is.
Okay.
So hospitality, we get two different pieces of money now. We get our own money that we collect, which is $1.2 million. And the county is also sending us their piece, which I'm just surprised as heck as how much money we are getting from the county. So I think we'll get about $1.5 million. Next year is also for the agreement that we have with Horry County and the Myrtle Beach. We get the settlement piece. There was a settlement piece a year ago, there'll be another settlement piece. I have no idea what that number is gonna be. So I just put in a whole placeholder, $275,000. And 2 years ago, you instructed me to put that money towards the pier. So I did the same assumption, assuming the pier is gonna need money for debt, whatever, I mean, who knows? This is kind of, I don't wanna say found money, but found money. So I made the assumption putting it to the pier, you can change that to however you want. It just seemed to be what we had done in the past, so continue on.
And that's gonna hit this fiscal year.
Only in October.
And the money that's left is basically, there was a big lump sum of money, and then they said that anybody could file claims against it.
Right, so it's after
Okay?
those.
And we don't know how many people file claims against it to know how much money we're getting back.
Right, this is the second piece of those claims, so yeah, I have no idea what's left. Possibly the Myrtle Beach is doing the accounting on it. We'll know more, but it was a good numbers, and it could be $1 million, it could be I mean, I just don't know.
And where's that on here again? I'm
It
sorry.
says Lorraine County Settlement, the 275. Oh, you're back. You're ahead. No, hospitality. No, right, Lorraine County Settlement? Yeah, Lorraine County Settlement.
Oh, I got it, okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just put the number in there, I don't have any idea, and it comes both local ATAX and hospitality will both get a piece. So hospitality is just bigger because we collect
And
more.
what's the other?
The other for that is, brain, I think,
$8,200.
no.
It was $9,000 last year. No. I don't have actual.
I don't remember.
I was just wondering
It's,
if it's like an interest or, you know.
oh, no, it's probably to pay, I don't know. Oh, this is money coming in for hospitality. I don't remember, but it'll come to me as we're going here. Maybe it'll come down to me if they're going to the next part, it might remember.
All right.
Okay, so then for departments need we're gonna use $49,000. Some of it is for John's furniture that he just talked about, and all the other things that we've just been talking about, hospitality can pay for. Except for the police and fire, that's the big number, between what Luke wants from Heritage and, some things, I guess, that, the fire department wanted. We can put some of those things in hospitality, if they're for the building, or if they're for capital equipment for firefighters, like the PPE. That's not something they wear on the street, they only wear it there, so we say it's capital equipment that's for firefighters, so that's what that number is. Transfers to general fund is the 250, it's just the normal, what we normally send up to general fund. We can change it, we can tweak it, but I usually have a schedule that pretty much lays out how we got it, so we can justify that we're doing it the right way. And then you'll see there's a big number that's left. We have $1.7 million left in this account, which we can do a lot of things with. But yet you're limited because it's gotta be tourists, or it's gotta be police or fire. But it's sitting there, one thing in my mind for all of you is, what's gonna happen with the people? That has been our go-to source. Hospitality has basically paid everything over the 4 million, the 1.5 million from the state and everything else. Hospitality has paid. It's been our little place to go to, so.
Nest egg. Nest egg.
Well, yeah, and it is, and it's also, well, don't forget, if you ever get to the point where you need a new firehouse, or you need a new police department, or you need a new fire truck, it can come out of this fund. Doesn't have to hit your taxpayers. What we usually do with fire trucks is we take 50% from general fund and 50% from hospitality.
Police cars come out of it.
Police cars always come out of this fund. That's why I always take it out of there for police cars. They don't hit the general fund at all. So anything that's police and fire, that's what this can be used for. That's the way they set it up. So that $1.7 million as of right now is the next day. It could change if we don't get that much money in. I mean, there's a lot of things factored in here. But I think it's a grant. That's what that number is. The 8,200 is a grant and something else. Interest, it's interest in the grant. John was getting a grant for the furniture. So, yeah.
We talked about that.
So that's part of the 8,200. So it's that and interest.
So it's grant and interest.
$5,000 for the grant and $3,200 in interest as our rates continue to stay as high as they are, and we have $1.7 million left. Interest will be pretty good in that fund. All right, now local accommodations works totally differently. Local accommodations is set by state law. We all adopted it, but what this one does, this one lets you pay for anything to do with police and fire. So it can pay for salaries, it can pay for anything. Where hospitality can't be used for salaries, it has to be used for things. But that's the way we set it up way back when, because we always knew we were gonna need things, and it was a funding source that we would always have, and the tourists would help pay for it. So in local accommodations, what we had done before the pier is all of the money collected each year was put into general fund. And then we kind of stopped that for a while, and that's to pay for the pier. We get tired of saying everything is for the pier, but it's a big, big nut, so that's what we do. So what I've thought of to do for next year is we'll spend all the money we bring in for next year, but we still have a nest egg, because there's still money from prior years that we haven't spent. And then go forward, spend what comes in for the year, send it to general fund, to cover police, fire, whatever. And then your nest egg will continue to be what it is, only it's gonna be a couple of years old. But that's the rationale that I would use. Everything you bring in for the year, you send up to general fund. But what's there from right now, we're just gonna let it sit there for right now, because once again, who knows what the next year brings? You know, but that's just a theory of how you could do it. We probably could write that into the fund balance ordinance, but it used to be we got 190,000, and you see we get twice that. Because of the settlement with the county, the numbers are quite a bit bigger than they used to be.
So the 625, 650, you would not move into general fund, you would just let it sit here, that's what you're saying, right? Am I hearing you correctly?
No, we are, that's what's coming in, we're using 572 of it. So what this is transfers to general fund, this 572 would cover your firefighters and whatever else we can do in police.
Okay.
But I'm saying, you're taking in almost, I didn't use all of it, but I used 572 of it. I mean, you can use it all, but use almost what you bring in between the two funds.
Okay,
And you take that in the next year.
okay.
But it will leave you, I have to go back and pull out the numbers of what's left right now. It's a pretty good
Yeah, it
number, but you don't know.
still leaves you a nest egg, it
It
still
leaves
leaves.
you a little bit, right?
You're not putting it.
But go forward, that's how you would pay for your new firefighters. That's how you would offset your new police officers. And we can take more for this year, but I was trying to make it conservative so that every year you just take what you get. And that's
You're
the
not
plan.
grab, it's just not a true money grab, there's some rationale behind.
And we have used a lot of this for the pier too. I mean, what we could use for the pier, we've used for the pier, and now I put it down to the $50,000, which is to pay towards the debt. I'm hoping that, we're all hoping that all ends.
But you're not showing the 572,000 in your general fund revenue for this year.
It's in there,
Part
it
of that.
should be in there as a transfer. It's just, there's a huge number that says transfer from other funds.
That's part of it.
I'm hoping that I did that, transfer from other funds. It should be in general fund revenue.
Yeah, you got 1.3.
I get $1,365,000 coming.
Okay, so
that's
that is part of that
Part of
number.
that.
Okay,
So that number is a lot bigger this year
okay.
because we're not sending as much to the pier unless somebody tells me something's happening in that short period of time. So I'm going by assumptions. And this is my assumptions and I'm happy to change them any way you want. So what this would tell me is that for next year, what's coming in and what's going out is just about equal, because you see we're down to $715 is all I have left. But that bottom line ad fund. So for local accommodations, we're just using all we have, but there's still a little nest egg from right now.
But there is a fund balance, it's
There is.
just what is added to it.
There is a little bit of fund balance right now. I don't know how much it is, let me see.
Okay.
But to use it all just seemed to make a lot of sense at the moment. There might even be about $500,000 that we've got stashed there. But, plus we don't know what that settlement's gonna be. And it could be a lot bigger than it is if you decide when it comes in, you don't want to send it all to the pier, you want to keep some. I mean, that should be an option that is presented to you when the settlement check comes. I have no idea how big it's gonna be.
Bigger house, small either way.
Yeah, no way. No, I'm sure it's gonna be much bigger, but you know me. You have heard about me for a while. I'm pretty conservative sitting here. Okay, the next one is the stormwater utility, which we collect all the money from our $82 on our tax bill from residents. Commercials are different. And this is totally, this fund can only be used for stormwater utility. We're gonna get the $1.2 million in grants that John just talked about. The regular fee we collect is around 480, but I may have to look at that number, it may change slightly. 102 to 40 is, John uses a lot of that for training and education and things like that that are required for stormwater. That's what the 112 is. The $1.5 million is the project he just talked about. And this would leave us $118,000 of this year's money. But that gives you a little wiggle room for that too, because stormwater projects are only gonna go in one direction.
Isn't this fund just 3 or 4 years old, I think?
Yeah, it's about 4 years old now. I think it's about 4
I
years.
think we just finished our third year of collecting it last fall.
This will be the fourth.
Okay. It's really paid off. When you look at that, it gives us a lot of money to do things with for that purpose.
Oh, yeah, the cost of reinforced concrete pipe alone and plastic, Corrugated plastic pipe is triple. All components of the system, catch basin boxes, lids, everything is double the price. And it takes 3 months to get.
Like Rob just asked me, at some point you might want to raise it, but that's, I would think down the line.
Yeah, that's something that the council can decide with each budget year as our needs, as we project our next 5-year needs for capital. Right now, our needs are still high, but there can come a time when our needs increase or decrease, and council can, with each budget year, change that ERU amount from $82 to something a little higher or lower, depending on what our needs are. Right now, it should stay constant, but we'll make recommendations as the years go on.
So you don't feel any reason right now, just as we're kind of talking about this, that this should be raised?
Not at this time.
That it's meeting the needs and.
Yeah, I think right now we're in good shape. Mostly because of the all that recovery money that's floating around out there. I've been on 5 different avenues looking for federal money because there's so much recovery money, American Rescue Plan money out there to help with this stuff.
And that's helped a lot.
Yeah.
Getting the grants.
Yes, yeah, I'm actually looking for, just so you know, I have, in August and September, they're coming out with a round of grant funding, which I may be able to use some of it for our underground wiring project. You know, hazard mitigation grant money, through a brick grant, but that doesn't come out till August or September, the applications. So, but I'm learning about them now, so we can maybe take advantage of some of that.
Okay, so the last fund we have that's more or less self-funded is the capital projects fund, which was started before the stormwater fund. Capital projects used to pay for all of the stormwater, but we moved that into a separate place. The capital projects fund, we use it for roads, so now we're getting the money from Orange County again for road fees. We didn't get that for a few years. I'm still trying to find out where the RIDE 2 money is and the RIDE 1 money, which we never got from the county, so I have some emails out to the finance director to see if I can find that out.
So we still have not received any of that.
No, because they basically, it's my understanding what they did was, they said that there was X million dollars left out of the RIDE 3 program. And they said that they were gonna use it for other projects. And then Bill wrote him a letter and said, you know, I read the statute and it says that if there's any money left after the 25 projects have been done, that money will be returned to the entities that gave the money. And we're one of the entities.
And was there money left over?
Yeah, 30 million. So anyway, allegedly Bill talked to them and talked to them and they basically didn't want to give the money back. Okay, but they said that what they will do is we could pick some projects, right?
No,
To use during that 30 million and that they would come in and do the project.
no.
And that,
But-
it just.
But then it just sort of vaporized. Everybody went into nowhere and,
Need to follow up on that.
And that was RIDE 3 money?
RIDE 3?
RIDE 3 money.
Right through.
So that's not in here, that is a question that I have off on the side, there's a bunch of questions for every fund, and that's one of them. We'll see if we can find out anything.
Is it RIDE 3 or RIDE 2 money?
No, it's gotta be 2.
I think it's 2 money,
It's
3 is still going on.
You're right.
Three.
RIDE 3's just finished.
Yeah,
It's 2.
yeah,
Okay.
RIDE 2 money.
RIDE 2, okay, thank you.
Okay, and then there'll be some interest, because there is so much money in this fund, which we'll get to in a second, the interest is pretty high, 85,000. These are the things we would take out of next year, would be the road paving, which John just discussed, underground engineering of 100, which you discussed. And then we were gonna say half of the design contract from the contractor that's doing the designing. We've put half of it in this year because we didn't think they'd finish it this year, just as the half and a half. And that would leave us $40,000 of the current year's money. But if you all turn to page 45 for 1 second, I know we're jumping, but it kind of makes sense. If we don't do it now, you'll forget. Page 45 at the bottom, it tells you what's in this fund also, but it doesn't show is the American Rescue money. And you'll see at the very bottom.
Page
23. Page
They are,
23.
look, y'all. They're right here.
Oh, I see.
So on the left side, right-hand side, the numbers.
There you go, and I'll put it up here for you also.
Where is it?
Page 23.
At the very bottom.
Very bottom, very right, left, American Rescue.
Yeah, because these are individual
Right,
pages.
the accounting rules define how the government told us we could account for this money. It has to be deferred and it is not brought into revenue until you spend it. So this money is sitting in deferred revenue on the balance sheet of the capital projects fund. It was $1,035,000 as of June. They sent us another payment, so now it's $2,001,000. It is in a separate fund at the state, earning interest. We added to it. And the rules with it are that we have to spend it by
It's 26.
26. You have to commit what you're gonna do with it by 24. You have to spend it by 26. I also have a report that has to go to the state at the end of this month, no, the end of April, telling them if we have any plans. So if, the last time I told them, we used what we used it for the bonuses, and if the rest of it, council was still considering how to use it. You can get away with that till 2024, but it's coming. So we need to know and then be committed as to what you're gonna do, and then that has to be done by 26.
So not
We
fiscal year 24, actual calendar year
December
24.
31, 2026.
You gotta have a plan though in 24.
You have to have a plan by December 31st.
You have to have the
21.
money spent by 26, but you gotta have your plan in by 24.
Right.
Telling them what you're gonna do with that $2.3 million or $2.1 million.
Right, so for right now, for when I do the report in April, I'm just planning on saying we're still considering our options. Unless you guys come up with something between now and April 30th.
Well, I mean, the whole point is to let it sit and figure out how bad we're hurt over the pier. And if we owe money on the pier, we would be able to use that American Rescue money
To pay it
to
off.
not go into the hole on it.
Right.
I think we have
I don't think
enough.
we're gonna
I don't
get,
think
I
we're
don't
gonna
think
go
we're
far.
gonna get there for
But anyway,
Peter, but it's still.
that's where this project fund looks weird, but it's just because the money is, that's the rules from the accounting rules from the federal government. You can't show it until you spend it. It just sits out.
You just can't add it into the budget until you spend it.
Mhm. Right.
Till we spend it or till we
Spend it.
till you spend it. So it's
But
not
you-
even about how you identify it's spent.
You know,
give
you
it
have to
spent.
report to them how you're
Yeah.
gonna spend it.
Right,
But no,
But you
on
can't show it.
on the accounting
Can't show
rules,
it
you
in the
can't show it.
budget until you spend it.
So it can't be added into a fund balance.
Right. It's sitting in deferred and in fund balance. The deferred revenue, it's not even, it just sits there. So that's that's how capital projects works, and, however you guys wanna spend things, so let me know, I can move things around, and like I said before, we can take more money out of different places to cover things once we know what, in my mind, I have to know what you wanna do. I mean, I need to come up with this long list of wishes, but if they're not your wishes, then I can play it around and move things around.
and that's why it's important when we circle back around after lunchtime to come up with some suggestions on how you all want us to move forward. So
You were gonna do this.
I am, yes, ma'am. So I think one more page, and then we will break for lunch, because I think Larry's ready, and thank you, Diana, is just to touch on, this is something that council has requested, and we think we've captured everything, but if there's something we're missing, please let us know. Is the drug fund balance, the K-9 fund balance, and the 1% money through the state for the fireman's fund. We wanted you to show you what those amounts are, and I don't even think the drug fund balance is actually the current balance right now.
After the flock comes
just
out.
After the flock comes out. But we wanted to show this. This is something that you all said. I know it came up, and here's what these other funds are. The thing to remember about these funds, and Kenny can speak better on the drug fund and the K-9. I know from the fireman's fund, you're looking at $86,000, but it is very specific. It's a book this thick on what you can spend that money on. I'll give you an example. And in a nutshell, I can authorize the spending of our 1% money as long as it benefits the career and volunteer members. I can't use it on, if I want to renovate the fire station. I can't use it if I want to just paint the fire station. I can use it, we are upgrading and fixing the gym at the fire station. We can use that. We can use it for the training room. We're getting ready to purchase all new tables and all new chairs because of training. It has to be specific to those types of lists. So when Larry and I go to spend this money, we actually go and look at the book and look at the regulation and make sure that we're using it appropriately. I can use it for volunteer PPE, not career, because if the municipality covers it for the career staff, which they do, I can't use that. But that's a great question, Ms. Keating, but now for the volunteers, I can use it. We're getting ready to purchase new physical fitness equipment. I can use this money for that for volunteers. So it's very, very defined, and the
How
state
much money
defines
do you
that.
get put into the fund every year? I mean, what's the
It's
normal?
through the tax, I don't remember,
About 65.
it's 65,000, yeah, I don't,
Okay.
didn't remember off the top of my head. So it's specific on how we use it, but you all, and it does help us some. I mean, I will tell you, it does help us. That's the fireman's fund. I don't know if Chief Hoffman wants to add something to that, but it's just a specific on what we can spend it.
Well, I clearly don't have as much money as the fireman's fund,
As
but
you should be, sir.
I have spent it. The drug fund balance used to be a good bit higher. However, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, one of our local circuit court judges stopped all drug asset forfeiture. And it ended up going into a legal battle through the solicitor's office, and that was finally resolved in our favor. So these funds may increase over time, but we essentially stopped doing any seizures during that time period. For example, if we stop a car on the highway and it's full of drugs and money, we seize the car, we seize the money, and it goes into an account while we go through a civil asset forfeiture process. But because all of that was on hold, if we take a car from someone, we have to take care of it until it's resolved. So with that not in mind, with not knowing when that might be, we just stopped doing that and just focused on the criminal charges. So we hope that those funds maybe start to replenish the drug fund balance. The canine fund balance is by ordinance, was created to support our police canines. And that is usually, that's donations. When we get donations in from citizens or businesses to support the canines, and we turn that over to the finance department and they put it in that account. I hope to use that $8,800 this year to add a second canine to the department, and a canine's $10,000. That's how much it costs. What's that?
A little more than that.
Yeah, it costs $10,000 to purchase one with the training and everything. So we're hoping to use that fund balance this year. And the unique thing about the drug funds, and I don't know much about the fireman fund, but when we've gone to asset forfeiture courses on this, they kind of say, when you guys get this money, we expect you to spend it. This is not a savings account that you need to hold on to be able to just wait for that.
Look at the decimal and look at the comma.
But, oh, yeah, I didn't even realize that. I wish we did have $88,000 in there. That is just, hey Diane, that is just 8,000 that's in there.
You got 8 million.
Yeah, okay.
We spent it for plot.
We gotta
and I
make
just
sure.
haven't updated the numbers in plot.
Yeah, I wish there was
Those are
88.
good dogs. I'll
Yeah,
tell you what.
those would be expensive
You
dollars.
did plot, all right.
No problem. But just to kind of summarize that with the drug funds, we're supposed to spend that money on things, and it is restricted on how we can use it. It has to, there's different funds and different uses. Some can be used for training, but it primarily is directed towards drug enforcement or things that generally support law enforcement. So there is one piece of it, that's what we paid for the flock out of, that is for anything that's law enforcement related. Then there's another piece of it that can only be spent on drug enforcement related things.
The drug fund, is that back in place now? When
It
you
is.
stop someone, like the last one you stopped on 17, you had a bunch of cash. Did y'all take a car at that time, or did you?
I don't know which one you're talking
A
about.
couple months ago.
We haven't taken any cars in a while. Now, when it comes to the car, it's very specific. You need to have a clean title. It needs to be clear. You don't want to get into all these encumbrances with liens and other things like that. And there's some values and the amount of drugs. It's kind of a complicated process, but we haven't taken in any cars in a while. But we are back open to being able to do that.
Well, when you take drugs, there's no money in that. You can't sell them.
What's
That's
that?
the thing. I said, when you take drugs, right, you can take drug money, but what do you do with the drugs? You
Yeah,
gotta destroy
yeah, the
them.
drugs go into evidence and then ultimately they're destroyed after the case is over. Yeah, that's the story. But
Sell them.
we hope to be able to kind of see some of that going again now that the court case is resolved. The solicitor's office did an outstanding job representing.
Back when it enforced and used it, was there a great amount of money coming in?
I think the highest I remember it being was maybe about $40,000. Is that about right? Yeah. And then, for example, I bought rifles. I bought an assigned patrol rifle for each officer out of that money. It was just things, specific things that benefit that we didn't otherwise want to burden the taxpayers with right at that time, but could go into that. Any other questions about that?
Sound like you got a plan.
One of the other things, and Chief Hoffman just brought this up too, and I thank you for this because I forgot it. The state wants us to spend this money also. So what we do is we actually have a 1% committee. So it's just not Rob Clemens and Deputy Chief Carter spending this money. We have a 1% committee that has to be made up of so many career firefighters and volunteer firefighters. And we have a budget. We work up, what are the things we want to buy? So we project what we want to do. We did that with this year. The money that's left over actually goes into a retirement fund that is managed for us. And we have one of the volunteers manages that through a management company. And then career and volunteer members get that put into their retirement fund. And it's not a ton of money. I mean, it might be $2,000 or $3,000 because we do try to spend this money. So, because they want us to spend it, so. But that was a good point that Kenny made.
You buy a drone with that?
So, I wish. So we're kind of at a point, Larry has lunch ready. We're actually moving along really good. We're gonna hit enterprise funds, the peer fund, and then kind of how we do this after lunch. And then some funding proposals, and then we can start with the discussion. So you want to say come back at, do you want to go 12:30? You want to go 1? It's up to you. It's up to council.
Let's see where we are.
12:30, see where you're at, 12:30? Okay, yes, ma'am. All right.
You got to
Yes,
stay up.
yes.
You got to adjourn.
Do a recess.
Do a recess, Bob.
Recess.
Recess.
Recess meeting.
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn for lunch.
I'll make that motion to adjourn for lunch.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned for lunch.
Oh, man.
Took care of that easy. Oh.